and welcome to today's episode of Founders and Builders Rollercoaster Journeys, episode 8. And today we are with the CEO of Jumbo, which is a neobank headquartered out of London. So Ciaran McSharry is joining us today as our guest, and we are looking forward to this episode because I've been following and slightly involved in the journey of Jumbo since the early days, and I'm really keen to get this episode going. So, without much further ado, Ciaran, welcome.
Thank you.
And let's break the ice. What are you drinking?
I've got 2 drinks. I've got my coffee and my water. They've been early, anything stronger at this stage.
Okay, so is it a special kind of coffee? Do you have a go-to brand brew or anything, or is it just
No, it's a Colombian. It's one of these pots. So I do like the Colombian coffee.
Okay, perfect. All right, Ciaran. With the breaking of the ice, we're going to go back in time. We'd love to know who Ciaran is. How did you get to being the CEO of Jumbo? Mainly the childhood journey, mainly. So I don't know if you wanted to be a fire engine truck driver or a police officer, So what was that like? What's the journey from childhood?
Sure. Well, I presume we'll go into more detail on career later. So I'll just touch on childhood. But
Yes.
I grew up in Ireland, in Dublin, and I spent my first 22 years of my life there. Childhood journey was interesting. I'm thinking about this earlier. Do I remember what I really wanted to be? I think if anything, it was probably a policeman. But really, as I grew up and I played sport, never very good. I was never good at sport. I still am not good at sport, but I love it. I used to play rugby in school, and I think my dream was to play in Lansdowne Road, which is where Ireland played the international games. And then that was always to lead Ireland out, but it was never to be. Thankfully, we said
Okay.
But so that was it. So I spent my childhood there, happy childhood, growing up there in a family of five children, 2 brothers, 2 sisters. As I say, was educated there, went to school, and indeed, to this day, probably most of my very close friends are friends I've known since I was 7 or 8 years old. And whenever I go back to Ireland, we always catch up. And I went to university there, and it was after university that I made the break and I moved to the UK. So it's really then. Ireland was a very different time at that. People probably think of Ireland as it is today, in terms of pretty good economy, full employment, etc. In my day, and you can see from the lack of hair that it was a few years ago. I grew up in a country where there wasn't a massive amount of opportunity, and most of, if all of my friends had left Ireland at some stage to go overseas. Majority of them have gone back, but I have never gone back. I'll go back, and I love going back. But I've lived overseas all my life. I think I will for the rest of my life. So that's the background. I don't know whether that gives you what you would like.
And it does give us a brief view of the past, and obviously what you've been up to. We'll dive into that in the deep dive. Next question for you is, do you have any hobbies or leisure activities that allow you to find yourself or recalibrate?
Yeah, I do. I've got lots. For years and years, work was probably the biggest thing in my life, but I always found time outside that for sport. I mentioned I love sport. I love watching sport. I try and play golf. Most people would say try is the operative word, but I love the interaction. I love the humor. that you can have. I like walking. We do a lot of walking as a family.
Okay.
Rugby, as I said, is my passion, so I'll watch that any chance I can get, and I also enjoy socializing.
All right. Perfect. So you follow closely the Six Nations religiously every year.
Always have, even when Ireland were in their very bad dark days.
Okay. Fantastic. All right. And then last one in the icebreaker, family life. What does it look like as someone like yourself who's leading huge institutions?
Um, I'm very lucky. I'm married and have been for many years. My wife has always been very supportive,
Mhm.
and has always given me her full support and never any grief in the hours at work. I've got two lovely daughters who are grown now. I wouldn't call them children anymore, but I think as anyone knows, your children are always your children. And I'm reminded of the
Yeah.
story of my father-in-law had retired. I think he was probably in the late 60s. He might even been 70. I don't know, but I always remember his mother calling him child. Anyway, but oh yeah, so that's that side of my life. I'm very lucky. It's a very happy life, and
Mhm.
but yeah, you've got to try and get the balance. And you mentioned running big institutions. That's always been the challenge, and I won't profess to have always got that balance right between family and work. But you
Mhm.
have to make a conscious effort to try and get it right. It's
Okay.
always a challenge.
All right. Perfect. Deep dive.
Okay.
So in here we're gonna get into the nitty gritty. We'd like to know what your daily routine looks like as the CEO of Jumbo, and I know in the past you've also been the CEO of another bank.
Hmm.
So, what does your daily routine look like as a CEO?
As a CEO of Jambu versus the bank in Zimbabwe, very quite different because in Zimbabwe, when you're running an institution that's been up and running, it can be quite structured because
Mhm.
you're not trying to do many things, and you have a big team around you who will do their job, whether it's operations, HR, finance, etc. You've got people who support you and work with you on that.
Mhm.
But I've always been an early person. My brain is wired that it works best in the morning, so I tend to get up early in the morning. I
Mhm.
tend to go walking before I do anything. So out of bed, go walking, and that could be 5, 6, 7K. And then I will have breakfast and get straight into work. And with Jambu, it really depends. So the work could be at home, sitting in this room where you see me now. I spend quite a bit of time there, and there's no set routine. It really depends on where we are, whether we're talking to potential investors, whether we're talking to our app partner who is building our app, or many of the other people we engage with. Um, I try and work and finish nowadays. I'm trying to finish, at a reasonable hour. So it could be any time around 6ish. And then I try and switch off unless there's anything coming up. And then it's family time and the routine starts again.
Okay. So, do you find yourself going to bed really early in the evening, or are you around at 10, 11 p.m.,
No,
midnight kind
no,
of
I
vibe?
wouldn't do that. During the week, certainly not at 11, 12 o'clock. I'd try and be in bed by 10.
Okay.
Quite a boring individual.
Right.
But, we're all wired differently. And I know
Indeed.
some of the founders of Jambu, they work differently and they're better working at night versus today. And
Yep.
indeed, when I was in Zimbabwe, my FD was much more a night person. I was a morning person, and that can work very well. That can work very well.
Yeah.
You have to make it work. But I think it's important to recognize where your brain is most efficient and where it works best.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like you. I'm rather a morning person. However, I do struggle to in the evenings to switch off.
Yeah,
So I find that if I'm in bed lights out by 11 p.m., I don't need an alarm. I'll wake up like clockwork at
yeah,
between 10 to 5 and quarter past 5, no
yeah.
matter what.
I do need an alarm clock.
But if I go past that 11 o'clock, there's no way in hell I'm making that. And I need an alarm clock at 7 to wake me up. For some reason, it just, there's that 11 o'clock is what makes it or breaks it for me. And I do find that the brain works much better in the morning when there's no distractions. Between 5 and 7, the amount of work I'm able to pump out is like ludicrous. As soon as 7 o'clock arrives, it's breakfast time, and then it's the phone, the emails, the calls, packages being dropped, and just the buzz of the day. So yeah, I think early mornings works for me too, definitely. Moving on to past projects. So adult career, how did you get to Jambu from graduating till today? What was your career path?
Yeah, look, I'd say like everybody who has a career path, I don't think there's many people, and if there are, I'd love to meet them, who have a really structured career path and they know exactly where they're going, what's going to happen. I always say the career that you build is a combination of, I guess, your own personal ambition and drive and where you want to go. And there's always an element of luck, always an element of luck. But you make your own luck, and you can only achieve it if you're good at what you do. But I started, as I mentioned earlier, I left Ireland just after university, and I came to the UK, and I worked in the oil business for probably near on 8 years, with a brief break to go into a small wine company, which sounds a bit odd, but I'll explain the rationale for that. I'm an accountant by qualification, and I did a business studies degree in Dublin City University. So I'd always wanted to get into banking, from not childhood, but when I was kind of in my latter years in school and going into university, I thought banking was where I wanted to be. And that opportunity didn't really come along. So when I ended up working for a US oil company, Marathon Oil, I started doing my accountancy exams, and I was 2 years in, and I realized I wasn't getting to see the whole picture. I was getting to see a bit of what I needed to do. So I targeted small to medium companies, and I ended up joining this wine importer, and it really was like going back in time. And there was myself and the company accountant, and we did everything. And I learned so much about accounting, how to put a set of books together, balance sheet, P&L, all of that I would never have learned in a big company. And I did that for 18 months before I got back into the oil business with Total, and I spent six odd years with Total in the UK. And I ended up as the first group financial accountant they had in the UK, because Total at the time had a hugely diverse set of interests here. There was the oil and gas exploration and production, which is where I really started my work with them. And then they had a downstream business, but they had a whole load of petrochemical businesses and chemicals, etc., and refining, and all of that was held, in different companies. So we decided to put it all together into one holding company, and then to restructure and refinance the business. And that was what I did my last couple of years with them, which was tremendously exciting, and huge lessons learned from that. And it was from there that I ended up getting into banking. Because my last couple of years was spent up in Aberdeen in Scotland, which my wife and I thoroughly enjoyed. But after 2.5, 3 years there, we were keen to get back down to London, certainly nearer her family, etc. So it was at that point I made a conscious decision that if I'm going to leave there, it was time to make the move and try and get into banking. And that's where I joined Lloyd's GSB. I joined the life insurance business as their group financial accountant. I then went on and set up the savings and investment division under the new structure, having merged with TSB. And then I went in and I helped them on the cost side, managing the whole technology budget for the bank. And then after that, I got a knock on the door, a phone call from somebody and said, "Would you come and talk to Merrill Lynch?" So I went and talked to Merrill Lynch, and I joined their asset management business. And I worked my way from there, from being I was head of costs for what they called EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa, but it was really Europe. I became the global CFO for that, and then in 2006 we sold the business to BlackRock.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and that was. I stayed on with Merrill Lynch. I did have the opportunity to go to BlackRock, but I decided to stay at Merrill Lynch. And I went into their investment bank. And we all know what happened in 2008, 2009. Bank came in and rescued Merrill Lynch. I stayed with them for a year when then Barclays knocked on my door and said, "Would you come to us?" So I spent 9 years with Barclays in various roles, but started in their investment banking, and then I moved down to the head office. And in 2017, I was working on the what they call the Africa separation, which was the sale of the Africa business. And in December 17, they made me redundant. And it was then that First Capital came talking to me and said, "Okay, now you no longer work for Barclays, we're allowed to talk to you. Would you come to Zimbabwe?" And I said yes, is the short answer. And I then spent a year in Zimbabwe as the FD for the bank in Zimbabwe before I went and briefly became the group FD or CFO. And then they asked me to take on the MD role for Zimbabwe, where I was till September last year. And then at that stage, I took a break before I came into Jambu. And Jambu was an interesting one. I wasn't looking for a full-time role, but I met with Takwana, and he asked me to become an advisor, which I did. And then we both realized I think there was a lot more to do than maybe an advisory role. That's where we then started, let's make this more of a permanent position. And that's where I am. That's where I am today.
Okay, perfect. So now you are in that, I guess, the hot seat. And what does that look like? I know you briefly touched that, but how is the onboarding for you, and what are you mainly focused on at this point in time? I'd guess the fundraising is one of the bigger components. But yeah, so what's if you can walk us through your activities right now with Jambu and where we're going.
This is I kind of touched on it earlier. The difference between being the CEO of a big bank like First Capital Bank in Zimbabwe versus being a CEO of a complete startup is chalk and cheese. In my day now, I'm involved in everything, every single thing, and you really have to get hands on, which I enjoy, but it's very different. But you're right, fundraising is a big aspect of it at the moment, and for any startup, it's critical that you get funds raised, capital raised. But it's also one of the things that we have to also be careful about. You get capital from the right areas, and you don't raise capital from areas that may cause you problems going down the road. So you have to just make sure when you're fundraising, you are approaching it in the right way, and you're getting the right people on board. But so that's a big part of it. The other part of it would be around I mentioned the app launch. We're in the process of developing our app, and that takes quite a bit of time. Making sure we've got the right people on board and working with our partners who are providing banking services to us, and also trying to develop new partnerships from the various people we know. And whether that's an insurance partner, an investment partner, people who will help us on our journey and help our customers as we build out the vision of what Jambu should be.
Okay. So with that in mind, who is Jambu being built for? Target market.
Target market. So the target market is really the African diaspora. Innocent and Takwana can articulate this far better than I can. But if you think about the number of Africans that are leaving Africa and the amount of money going back into Africa. People think about for Africa, foreign direct investment, but that actually dwarfs the amount of money that's being remitted by African immigrants who return money back to Africa. And they return money back for different reasons. It could be back to the family. In some cases, it's back to the family, hoping that it's used in some cases for day-to-day consumption, but also for investment. But our experience with a lot of it, because there isn't a product that allows people to invest, buy insurance, etc., it tends to get used for consumption and not for the purpose it was designed for. So our vision of Jambu is, as I say, the target market is the African diaspora, and the vision is to try and build a platform. I'll call it a financial services platform. First and foremost, you have to have a basic banking app that people can have their salaries, wages, whatever paid in there, and then they can do the day-to-day transactions, whether they're standing orders, direct debits, making payments, etc. But aligned to that, what we want to try and have then is an insurance hub where you can buy insurance either in your home country, which is or your country of residence, I should say, if you're in the UK. In the UK, maybe it's your car insurance, maybe your house insurance. But if you need to buy insurance back in your home market where you've come from, maybe it's funeral cover or whatever it is, we've got a link and you can do that through the app. Similarly with investments, building an investment platform that will allow people to invest, whether it's in unit trusts, investment trusts, real estate investment trusts, etc., but allow them to build a future for themselves. Again, you can choose whether it's in your country of residence, or it could indeed be in the Africa continent. And then ultimately we will look at insurance, etc. And I would like to also have on there what I call a community section, where people can go in and they can provide advice to each other. They can connect with people. If you're new into the UK, you can go in there and you can look up and see who's from your home city. See if you know people, and then it gives you an opportunity to connect. So it's a financial services app that allows people to do their day-to-day business, but also builds a future and allows them to reinvest back in their home country or back in Africa.
Building a sense of community as well.
Absolutely. I think it's important. I came here many years ago, but I know Ciaran also, and when you come, it's a daunting place, the UK. It's big, and you need a route where you can actually try and connect with people and make connections. Otherwise, it can be a very lonely start to a life in the UK.
Yeah, indeed. London, especially, is quite something. I remember arriving in London many years ago, and my first, I guess, 48 hours were not glorious because I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And then things just like started working out, and you find, obviously, coming over from France back then, I tried to hang out where the French people were hanging out, and then my first job was with the French and so on and so forth. So it does that community is definitely something that's important. But I find the fact of integrating community to financial services is actually incredible, because I'm pretty sure there's that component of educating people, because I know from having observed what's going on with Jambu, a lot of people want to invest, but it's a question of I want to invest, but how does it work? When do I get my money back, and so on and so forth. So
but that's a good point. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's something that is underrated, and I'm surprised nobody else in the financial banking sector is doing this, because you realize that actually investments are accessible to everybody, really, if you think about it. And but there's a lot of I guess secrecy or non-spoken things about A, money, and B, about how do investments work? What are the different types of investments? How easy and how accessible is it? And I think what Jambu is doing with that is quite incredible, because there's a huge, I guess, educational component to it, and empowering the community, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a couple of things in what you just said. first and foremost, all that I've laid out, this is a journey. Day one when the app goes live won't have every single thing I've just described. It will build to that. But the investment in Jambu is a long-term investment. And I had this conversation with somebody during the week where they were saying, well, when will I get a return? And I said, if you're going to invest to get a dividend, etc., it's the wrong investment for you. This is almost a venture capital
100%.
type investment. It'll be a medium to long term before there is anything back. If you look at the big Revoluts and Monzos, those kind of businesses, they're still not paying dividends because they're investing everything back into growing business and growing the app, and that's what people need to think about. That's number one. I think the other aspect in one of the things we're looking at very much is that partnership base. So we have got insurance businesses in Zimbabwe where it will be our first target market who are looking to partner with us, and indeed we're talking to some of the investment houses in Zimbabwe as well about building products that will allow people to invest. This will be about the retail investor. So it's not if there's high net worth, that's fine. I'm sure we can help them, but it's more about the retail investor. And one of the most valuable things I personally learned very early in my career was pay yourself first. In other words, get paid, make your savings. Don't wait till the end of the month because you'll have spent your money by the end of the month. But if you invest from day one when you get paid, you kind of forget that money and then you live off what's left. So these are the kind of lessons and I think opportunities that if people want to invest the day they get paid, put whatever it is, 50, £100, whatever it is, away and forget about it and let it grow.
Amazing. So I guess at that level, Jumbo is really disrupting more than just like your traditional neobank. It's a hell of a lot more. So for those who are tuning in and listening in, this is the value proposition. This is where we're different. This is where we're unique, and we're the only one. Jumbo's the only ones in there catering for the diaspora, which is huge community. Yes. And not just in the UK. I mean, obviously that's the first port of call for most of them, but I know that they're all over Europe. They're in the US, in the Southern Hemisphere, going east, so New Zealand and Australia. There's a massive community, and yes, everyone ends up wanting to go back home. I mean, I know my generation, 1980, Gen X. We're going back. We're going back to Zim. I mean, for us, we go back. We spend 4 months of the year in Zimbabwe and 8 months in Europe, simply because of our business interests and also for climate reasons, but also because Zimbabwe is an amazing place, which sadly doesn't always get the credit it deserves. Yeah. Yes, it's a tough place, but I guess everywhere is a tough place. Every country has its problems and issues, etc. But there's a great sense of community in Zim. Of all places, and everyone's going back to their roots, I guess, to see if they can make something happen. And I think having a financial platform like this is going to make things a hell of a lot better. It's going to contribute to local economies, whether it's Zimbabwe, because I do know that it's not just Zimbabwe. It just happens that founders are from Zimbabwe, and just cover the whole of Africa and who knows further afield. But it's
first market. And the aim, obviously, very long term is Pan Africa. But we have, if you look at our advisors, we have a lady Hannah from Morocco. She's very excited about what this can also bring to Morocco. So there's as you say, the diaspora community, the African diaspora community in the UK is just huge, and just the UK is a massive opportunity, but also Europe. But let's start with the UK. We've got to get this up and running and prove that this works. But I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe it would work.
Indeed. So I know we've covered quite a few of these things, but problems Jambu is solving. So we mentioned, the educational side of things, the community, but have you got anything in mind other than that we're solving? I know there's the remittance kind of
Yeah,
scenario as well.
we have, and I won't go into detail on the remittances, but we have some innovative ideas around the remittances that I think could work very well. It's too early though for me to go into it in this podcast. So there's absolutely remittances, but I think it's also, as I said earlier, it's about building that ability to look after your family back home if you want to, but also to build that nest egg for yourself, so that when you do go back to Zimbabwe, if you want to go back to Zimbabwe or wherever you're from, there is a nest egg there for you. You're not going back to nothing. You're going back to something. Now, that's a challenge in itself. We know in Zimbabwe, fantastic country that it is, we know there's challenges as to what currency you're investing in, how you're investing in it, and the protection of those assets. So that's a key thing we're going to have to get right with our partners and make sure that there is there's no guarantee in life, but at least it's invested in a robust currency and a robust investment.
Okay, perfect. And then obviously, nothing is always sweet and beautiful and wonderful. Challenges, difficult times that you face on a daily basis and foreseeable future. What are the challenges that you have to get through for Jambu to get to the top, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's many challenges, and there's, like you say, there's always challenges in any part of life, and indeed, wouldn't life be boring if there wasn't challenges? But
The hardships allow us to appreciate the good times.
absolutely, and you know what? It's those hardships and those challenges that make you grow as a person and learn, etc. But in this, there's a load of challenges that I know are going to hit us that I don't know what they are yet. But today, I guess the biggest challenge is fundraising. We touched on. We need to make sure we raise sufficient funds so that we can keep the business going. Because, like any business, you're not going to earn revenue day one, and so we have to make sure we got sufficient capital. We have to make sure that our partnerships are robust, and we're building partnerships with the right partners. And in that respect, it's the same in any business. It was the same I said to our customers when I was in Zimbabwe. You have to have a strong partnership that is going to help you both grow. It's not about one of us winning and another losing. We have to both grow and benefit mutually from whatever partnership is. So that's what we have to build. And, as I say, we're talking at the moment to banks, a couple of banks in Zimbabwe. We're talking to insurance. We're talking to investment management as well to build those partnerships. But that's a way to go. The other thing about it is also the app. As you start to build the app, have you got the right regulation in place? Have we got the right banking license? Have we got the investment license? Have we got the insurance license? All of that, and the partners that are going to provide the banking service to us, making sure they're happy. But the one thing that has struck me, and I'm just 2 months, pretty much 2 months this weekend now in this job. The thing that has really struck me, and I think you alluded to it earlier on, is how people are helping each other. Whatever business they're in. When I've talked to other founders, and I attended a dinner last week, and our partners, etc., everybody wants to help you, and it's genuine. It's really struck me as a great community where people really do pull together and provide you the advice and the benefit of their experience, the ups and the downs. And that's been tremendously enlightening. But the challenges, I think, are there. It's around making sure you've got the funding coming in. We've got the products right. We've got the partnerships right. We've got the people right. So there's many balls you're trying to keep in the air. And obviously, you try and keep the team as lean as possible in the early days, because you're conscious you're spending investors' money. You've got to spend it wisely and hire when you need to hire, and not too early.
Indeed. So keeping it lean and mean,
Yeah.
and I think so far, it's been I think it was since June that I jumped on board with Innocent, who actually was my senior at boarding school. So he's known me since I was, I guess, 5.5, 6 years old, and he
You're a
just
boy, is that right?
Yeah, I am, and absolutely. So I'm a pure product of the Peterhouse group of schools. So I went to Springvale and then Peterhouse, and actually, so Innocent was a senior, and he actually sat on the board of a startup that I had just after COVID, which sadly I wasn't able to raise, and but he just knew that I had I'm always keen to be part of a founding team. That's where I'm most comfortable. And so he just like rang me up and says, "Hey, I've got something that I know you're going to jump on board." And he told me about Jumbo, and I just said, like, "Let's make it happen. Let's do this." And it's been a real eye opener because I've always wanted to do something with Africa and for Africa, and this was just something that ticked all the boxes for me. And I've seen a lot of, I mean, everyone's grown with this journey so far. We're still in the early stages. I know and understand. I'm looking at the building of the app, etc. But also that community, that eye opening, and oh wow, there's actually something happening for the diaspora and Africa as well. And we're solving so many solutions despite all the challenges that we face. And I think being lean and mean allows us to adapt a lot faster to and rise up to the challenges in a better way, if that makes sense.
It does. Makes absolute sense. Absolutely agreed. So, I've been lucky in, I didn't know an awful lot about Africa until 5, 6 years ago, 2018, when I went out there. Yeah, and there is so much opportunity there, so much opportunity.
Indeed, indeed. So, I guess the highlights of your journey so far, with I guess we can include your journey, your African journey, being heading a bank in Zimbabwe, and now getting involved in a neobank and a startup, that involves a financial platform for Africa and for the diaspora.
Yeah, I always say to my two girls, I'm the adage that you're never too old to learn. because you just continuously learn, and you realize a couple of things I learned very much when I went to Africa. You have so much knowledge and experience, we all have in our heads, and you only bring to the fore what you actually need at the time. And sometimes I think we underestimate how much experience and knowledge and ability we have. And when you're thrown in the deep end, you can really make things happen. So I mean, I think sorry, I went off beast a bit there, but the question was the highlights, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So look, in my life, I've had so many highlights. Um, you know, my family is probably the biggest one. I'll be honest with you, because I'm forever grateful to have my family and the support they give me.
Mhm.
But career-wise, there have been many challenges and many opportunities. That whole I referred earlier about the sale of the Merrill Lynch investment managers to BlackRock. Uh, that again, that was fantastic. That was a great highlight and a great opportunity to learn and get involved in something that I'd never done before. And out of
Mhm.
that came so many opportunities. Um, when I left there, I think I had 4 jobs on the table, and I had to really make a decision as to whether I stayed with Merrill, went to BlackRock, and went to, I think UBS also had offered me a job at that time. So I had 3 or 4 things. So I was very fortunate. That was a highlight. I've no regrets about the decision I made.
Mhm.
I think undoubtedly going to Africa with First Capital or the legacy Barclays business was an absolute highlight. And again, getting the opportunity to run that bank. It was 4 years as CEO, between acting and substantive CEO, and I think we made huge progress in those 4 years. So I'm very, very proud of that. Yes, my successor has a lot of work still to do, but I think we laid very solid foundations for future success. And here, look, this is a massive challenge, but I also see it as a potential opportunity, both for anyone who wants to invest in this. But we've talked here about the opportunity, and I think hopefully whoever's listening
Indeed.
is getting the sense of the passion that there is, and also the opportunity we believe there is. So if we can really grow this business and get the funding and the equity raised to do that, there really is no limit in my mind as to what this business can achieve. So the next year or so is going to be an absolute highlight as we go forward, with lots of challenges and, as I said, bumps in the road that we don't know what they are, but we'll have to face them when we get there.
Indeed. So, quick one on the fundraise. How much has been raised so far, or at least committed, and what is the target, and what's the timeline?
Yeah. So we've raised, I would say, so far from various investors, we've raised 500,000 to 800,000. We're targeting to raise 2 million, and the timeline would be to try and do that within the next 2 months. And it's important to do that because we believe the valuation will change hugely once we start to go live, and we also, if we can get the funding in that allows us to keep going, we can focus then on what we need to do, which is about the product, getting the app running, getting customers onboarded, etc. We refer to being lean and mean. So now you're trying to focus on multiple things. If you can focus on a few and do them well, that would be great. But that's going to be dependent on getting the funding in. But we've a lot of people we're talking to. A lot of people very interested in investing, and we believe we will raise the amount required within that time period.
Okay, and that'll be buying us a runway of what, 18 months? Is that what the goal is?
Absolutely, a year to 18 months.
Okay, all right, fantastic. So now on lighter matters. Not everything is all serious. So a couple of fun facts. We'd like to know, how much time do you spend on your phone screen for non-work related things?
Non-work related. It's a hard one to answer. I'll tell you why, because I read the paper on my phone screen. But I'm not a social media junkie, if that's what you're getting at. I don't tend to use social media. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's about the extent of it. But whenever I've posted on LinkedIn, I tend to have to get, as I refer to it, my help desk, which is one of my daughters, to help me. But yeah, I try and limit it, but I tend to read the paper on there. I get the paper downloaded and I read that. But apart from that, I don't tend to use it a huge amount outside work.
Okay, perfect. Next question. Bucket list item to tick off in 2024.
I think we've been talking about that for the last 50 minutes.
Okay. It doesn't have to be work related. It can be anything. Maybe a travel, an activity, something with your family. It can be anything.
No, I don't have necessarily a bucket list this year. I know we are trying to go away as a family in August. My eldest daughter's a teacher, so we tend to be confined to when we can go on holiday. And I know you're going to cooler climes for August, but so we're looking at booking somewhere in Sicily for a week and getting away as a family. Having spent 5 years in Africa, it'll be nice just to be able to, the four of us or five of us, go away and have a few days of just us and chill and relax.
All right, fantastic. That's noted. So we can maybe after the podcast have a chat about that, because I do have a private concierge business, so we can make sure that you get looked after well on your Sicilian trip. All right. So next one up is beach house holiday or mountain cabin getaway.
Now this is where the family will split, because I'll go for the mountain hideaway and do some walking, etc. Whereas I think my daughters and to some extent my wife would probably go for the beach house. The idea would be to do a balance between the two.
I guess there's a couple of nice places in Europe that will allow you to do both.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's We had a beach house there down in Cornwall a year or so ago, and my wife and I did this most fantastic walk right along the cliffs and the sea coast, and it's just stunning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Fashion statements. Do you rock a hoodie and sneakers or a suit and tie for meetings?
What do you think?
Well, it depends on the meeting, but I'd be tempted to go for the suit and tie, obviously.
I think it depends on the meeting and who you're meeting. Certainly, what I found is interesting. What I found during COVID was the ties disappeared. So after
They
COVID,
did.
I always wore a suit, but I didn't wear a tie unless I was going to a meeting where I needed a tie. So I carried ties in the office. Whereas in this role, I don't wear a suit and tie. This is it. This,
It's the smart casual or actual casual. I
it's
don't
casual.
think I haven't worn a suit in a while. I do miss it from time to time, but yeah.
Yeah, I still have a suit though. Don't
So,
worry.
coffee or tea, and which kind? So I know you're drinking coffee, but do you enjoy your tea, or are you a
No,
coffee?
my in the morning, first thing, cup of tea, not coffee, cup of tea, and
Okay.
then it's coffee, and then it's coffee after that.
Okay.
But I'm not a tea aficionado, so I think we tend to have the Yorkshire tea at home. My wife's preference, I like it as well, so it's fun, it's happy.
Okay. Next question for you: when celebrating a successful closing,
Yeah.
are you popping champagne, cutting a rug on the dance floor, or quiet celebration in a restaurant with your wife?
Anybody who knows me will tell you I'm definitely not on the dance floor. Definitely on the dance floor, my wife included. And I'm not really a champagne guy, so it'll be the latter, I'm afraid. It'll be a quiet night celebration in a restaurant with my wife or in the local pub, having a pint of beer.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Great. Comedy club night or a TED Talk marathon for a fun evening out?
I'd go for the
What's your pick to unwind?
comedy club, definitely.
Okay. And the last one is sports. So this I think you'll like this question. Sports, where would you thrive? Single competitor, double sports, relay team, or a team sport?
I think it would be team sport. I think
Okay.
it would be team sport. As I say, I'm not very good at sport, but I've always enjoyed team sports, and I always use rugby as the example. If you think about 15 men in the pitch or women in this day and age, uh, and each one of them has a different role, but you've all got the same aim, and you got to pull it together. So yeah, no, I love team sport. I think once you understand your roles and what you're doing, and if you get the structure and the organization right, you can achieve great things, even with a less talented team.
Absolutely. And I guess that takes us to the end of the podcast. We'll wrap up. I don't know if there are any questions that are going to be asked in the comment section. So we're just going to give them a minute or so to ask any questions if anyone has any. Otherwise, I'm going to put a ticker at the bottom where people can find the website and get hold of more information about Jambo and sign up to more information. And if you wish to invest, you can definitely get hold of us through the website or through hello@jambo.app, and somebody from the team will get back to them. Okay, so other than that, Ciaran, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this eighth episode. We really hope to achieve the fundraise in the next 2 months. So we'll definitely be shouting and screaming and cheering on the whole team and the whole initiative and the platform. And yeah, it's exciting times ahead.
Definitely.
And I guess thumbs up for the whole team. And yeah, and the last final announcement is this episode is sponsored by Value.work. They do OKRs. It's a platform, a SaaS that's also fundraising at this point in time. But yeah, so they allowed us to hold this episode. So they're really supporting Jumbo as well. All right. Thank you very much, Ciaran. Have a wonderful Easter with the family. And I guess I'll speak to you next week. Back to work.
But thank you, and enjoy Easter yourself. Thank you. Good to talk to you.
All right. Thank
Bye now.
you. Cheers, Ciaran.